Welcome to My Biker Life, where we look underneath the helmet to tell the stories of bikers from all across this great country. This week, we pay tribute to those who have served our country in the military, starting in our nation's capital with a rider who knows heavy machinery.
Pow! You just nailed it.
In St. Paul, Minnesota, we meet a rider who rode with the one percenters
I did some bodily harm to a guy with a coffee cup.
and turns it around.
Now I get to ride motorcycle with purpose.
And an old friend in Beloit, Wisconsin takes us back for a look at the classics.
You know chrome's my favorite color, right?
Bikers, they aren't just stereotypes anymore. So take a ride with us and let's get to know a few more. Now, on My Biker Life.
My name is Myron Wong. I was born and raised in Cleveland, Ohio. When I was a little kid, my dad had a Honda CB 350. He used to take me on these rides. We'd take a ride up to somewhere by Niagara Falls to go camping. On occasion, I would fall asleep. So he rigged up some sort of seatbelt where he took either some rope or some belts strung together and literally would tie me to the sissy bar so I wouldn't fall off the bike. My father never trusted me with his Honda CB 350, so I was always the guy that had to wash and dry the thing, and it was never cleaned enough for him. So, it kind of put the bug in me from that point that at some point I was going to get a bike.
Myron would have to wait nearly 30 years before learning to ride on his own. During that time, he joined the Army and earned his future riding nickname, Tanker.
My father fought in World War II as a tanker, so I thought, okay, another connection with my father, I'll join tanks. And so the idea was that I was going to serve my 4-year contract and get out, just have a good time while I was in. But it turned out to be a lot of fun. One of the things I like about the Army is it's not about your last name or what family heritage you come from or how much money your family has. It's all about performance. And if you perform well, you get promoted. I was fortunate enough to get promoted to sergeant in 2 years. And I thought, well, this isn't a bad gig. As a tanker, I was a driver, a loader, a gunner, and then a tank commander. And then I was a tank section sergeant, and then I was a tank platoon sergeant. I made it up all the way to master sergeant, but I kind of screwed up my back. After a few years of constantly jumping off the turret and then onto the hull and onto the ground in full gear, one day I jumped a little bit too much and I saw stars, and I didn't know it, but that's when I blew out some discs in my lower back. So after 22 years, it was time to hang it up. The thing about my career that I regret is I got to the Gulf War after the ceasefire already set, and then I had to retire out due to medical reasons before the onset of Iraq and Afghanistan. So I sometimes wonder what good I might have been able to do if I didn't retire out as quickly as I did.
Now, faced with retirement, Myron was left with a career of tank experience that didn't translate to the civilian world.
The only thing that's comparable would be earth movers or like construction track vehicles, and that's not something I wanted to do anymore. So I was really apprehensive when I retired. I was really concerned what I was going to do. Here I am, ending an Army career. My back hurts like all get up. I'm walking around with a cane. The VA issues me this back brace with 4 curved metal rods in there, and I'm thinking, I didn't expect it was going to be quite like this when I got out of service. So I was a little apprehensive about that.
My name is Ponch. I got that nickname back in 1979.
Taken from the character of Frank Poncherello on the TV show Chips, the nickname stuck.
Back in those days, I was in shape and I had brown hair. I've had other nicknames in my life, but this has been the kindest and nicest nickname. I grew up in Chicago, Illinois. second-generation Mexican-American.
Encouraged by movies like The Wild One, Ponch's love of motorcycles started early.
I'd have the chair turned around backwards, and I'd go boom, 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 and I'd pretend it was a motorcycle. My father would walk in the kitchen and say, "What the hell are you doing?" I said, "I'm riding a motorcycle, Dad." My best friend, we would steal his brother's motorcycle. We'd go riding, and then we'd come back, and we would just clean the bike up and everything, and we'd roll it back up. So I grew up on the streets of Chicago. Back in the old days, those were old neighborhood days. Gang life was gangs and fighting. We would fight after the dance at the local Catholic church. The girls would go one way, and then we'd meet at the park and fight. Eventually, my father wanted to move us out of the inner city and move us to a suburb. And being the first Mexican there, I learned how to fight. I learned how to run. And the cops didn't like me, the people didn't like me. And I really experienced racism back in those days.
Up in the morning, way too soon.
At the age of 18, I quit school. I joined the Marine Corps on my birthday. I learned the very first day in the Marine Corps, life as I knew it ceased. The Marine Corps taught me a lot of life values. After I finished boot camp, I started volunteering for NAM because I was young and stupid, bro. At the time, I was like, I want to go to Vietnam and, fight. I was trained to fight. I wanted to fight. At that particular time, though, they were starting to pull out. They were pulling the forces out. So the comeback was, we're drawn. I got out of the Marine Corps in '72. They didn't like us in the '70s. And so I had nothing to do with military stuff, They care for the veterans now. They didn't back then.
An unwelcoming American public was only the beginning. There was more than one dark side to serving in the military during the Vietnam era.
I did a lot of drugs in the Marine Corps, unfortunately, because it was so accessible. I learned the darker side of life. My aspirations was to be a drug dealer. I used a lot of my product. That was my downfall.
After getting out of the Marines, Ponch got a good construction job, got married, and had a family. However, his past kept creeping in.
I had that yearning in me, that spirit that just, wouldn't settle for just the home life. I had gotten enough in the motorcycle club world. Some of us in my old club, we had invitation to go 1%. In the process of thinking about it in serious discussions, I was also told, you have to clean up your act, though. You're getting too out of control. You're a liability. Even within our own organization, we have to babysit you too much because you're drawing a lot of attention on us. At that point, I decided I was going to do it. That was more important than my family. And at that time, that's when I told my wife, we need to get a divorce.
Too wild even for a 1% motorcycle club, Ponch headed off to drug treatment and left everything, even his family, behind. Coming up, see how Myron finds his way again after life in the military, and see how Ponch takes an exit to a new road in life.
My name's Brad Sandmire. I own the Last Lap here in Beloit. Friendly little neighborhood place. Everybody knows everybody. There is no secrets. I absolutely love everybody that comes into this place. I mean, if they're here more than 15 minutes, I love them. If I don't love them, they're gone. I never really had any desire to be in the bar business. My family's been in the bars well before I was born. My grandpa, he owned quite a few bars in Wisconsin. The way I understand it is he would go around to the county line of every dry county in the state and put a bar right there. And he did really good at it.
Originally, the Last Lap was converted from a laundromat. Brad laid claim to the shop out back and grew up working on classic bikes and hot rods. Eventually, the bar passed down to Brad.
Shop kind of fell into disrepair. The roof leaked, ended up falling in. And I thought last year, I'm gonna build a shop, redo the whole thing from the top down. Makes it so that, I can basically be here all day and take care of stuff, yet I'm out here building cars and bikes and all the great stuff that I like to do too.
I also got a smoker here at the bar so that whenever we get hungry, we can do ribs or prime rib.
It's like a clubhouse out here more than anything.
Ultimately, it's about relationships. The best part about owning a bar is the people.
The best people I know and the absolute worst people I know come from a bar. Kind of like in the service. The best people you'll ever meet and the worst people you'll ever meet. I was in the Navy for the Gulf War, USS Thorn, DD 988. Met one of my best friends ever. Me and him immediately just clicked. 20 years later, he's living up here now, working at the bar. And
this is how I met Brad. In the morning, they'd say, reveille, reveille. Sweepers, man your brooms, make a clean sweep fore and aft. I didn't realize that I'd already done my part, and I was doing Brad's part. And here I am, mopping for Brad again.
He come to the ship in dry dock, and green as can be, and I pretty much was too, and that's where we met. And after we actually went out to sea, we have so many stories.
So I'm new on the ship. I'm the newest guy on the ship. I'm the greenhorn, the newest guy on the ship. So I get on board and stuff. And so one of the first things that happened was the chief officer told me, he says, I'll need you to go down to the engine room and get me a boatswain punch, because we're all working on something, we're doing something. And I said, a boatswain punch, and he said, a boatswain's punch. He told me who to get it from was like First Class Wilson or something, right. Petty Officer First, which was this guy. He was like this tall. He was like, he had to crouch down, everywhere he went because he was so big. And so I go down and I said, First Class Wilson, and he goes, yeah, that's me. And I said, yeah, they sent me down here to get a boatswain's punch. And he said, oh, a boatswain's punch. Okay, let me get that for you. So he turns around and he turns back around and bah, hits me right in the solar plexus, and my chest caved in and I fell down and I cried. And then he picked me up, slapped me on the back. He was like, welcome to the ship. Yeah, that was a funny story from the Navy.
There's a lot more.
After retiring from a 22-year Army career, Myron Wong was unsure how to transition to the civilian world. He turned to education, using his GI benefits to obtain a degree in business administration and a fitting career as an Army civilian.
I work with the National Guard Bureau. I'm the agency records officer for the entire National Guard Bureau. It's sort of like it's in my blood now. I grew up in the Army, and 22 years active duty, now 13 years as an Army civilian.
The silver lining to Army retirement was that Myron finally had a chance to get a motorcycle. He started with a weekend rider course and never looked back.
By the end of Sunday, the instructors were coming up to me asking, are you sure you've never ridden before? You've got this down. So that's when I knew, this is the thing for me, and been riding ever since. I average about 10 to 14,000 miles a year now. One of the reasons why I wanted to get the bike is it sort of gave me a connection to my dad. My dad and his younger brother used to ride, and now my youngest brother and I ride quite a bit together now. And I, from time to time, would think about my father and his younger brother riding, and how much fun it would be if he was still around, me riding with him. The enjoyment for me is group rides and long group rides. And so I hooked up with the Great Lakes Road Riders. I started to put together a number of group rides, and that was actually fun. Planning, researching, and leading group rides are very much like leading a patrol or a mounted road march. I was able to kind of put to use the things that I'd learned over a 22-year career into my enjoyment with large group rides.
Through all of this, Myron felt that there was still something missing. He couldn't help but think back to a hobby and a friend from middle school.
I met Myron in 1977 when we were paired together as roller skating partners, and we were competitive skaters.
Same thing you see on ice skates, but just roller skates. We were pretty good at it. Our first competition, we got first place.
We stayed friends all through high school, and I attended his high school graduation, where on the back of his high school picture, he wrote, "Thanks for being such a good friend. Hope to see you in the future if I'm not too much of an Army man."
After high school, they drifted apart until one day, 30 years later, when Myron took a chance and reached out to Eve in an email.
At first, I thought the email was spam, and so I ignored it for the first 24 hours, but when I finally answered him, I realized it was my long-lost friend from back in 1977, and we reconnected a few days after that on the phone.
We stayed on the phone, I think it was for 9 hours that night. You could hear the birds chirping the next morning. It had been like we never lost contact.
Soon after, Myron and Eve started dating.
Our second date was on a motorcycle ride to the Triple Nickel, Ohio State Route 555 in Southeast Ohio. So after about 2.5 years or so, I was fortunate enough to get a job here, and I was able to move. And my wife and I just recently got married on July 6th of this year.
We had both been married before, so we didn't want a big wedding, and we didn't tell the family or friends where we were going, so we ran off to Monticello, and we had a beautiful ceremony, just the two of us with the officiant and the photographer.
In addition to riding, my wife and I enjoy dancing as well. We have an idea that during the off-season, during the winter break, we'll probably get back into ballroom dancing again. For me, it's reminiscent of my middle school and high school days when I was dancing with her on skates. It's really nice. It's like the enjoyment of riding and how that just kind of takes you away. When I'm dancing with my wife, it's the same thing.
Next up, Ponch has a life-altering experience, and Brad and Tim share some unexpected adventures. Ponch Iniguez had chosen to leave his wife and family behind to join a 1% biker club. Too wild even for this club, he first had to tame his behavior by going into drug rehab.
I was in treatment, and I start withdrawing. And so I got suicidal, and then I got violent. And at that point, they held a meeting and said, "You need withdrawal medicine."
While waiting to start his new medication, feeling overwhelmed by life, Ponch felt compelled to confront God and everything he had been taught growing up.
And I said, "What kind of flipping God are you? Give me a beautiful woman, and I screw her life up. What kind of God are you? Give me 3 sons with all the drugs I've used, and they're all intelligent kids. What kind of flipping God would allow me to come into their lives and screw them up? You call yourself God? That's just bull." And I said, "I know I'm sitting on the fence. I know who owns the fence. I'm going to get off this fence, and I'm going to serve him with everything I got unless you show up. You show me that you're real." And so I'd been cranking for 72 days nonstop using crystal meth and drink about a quarter bottle of Jack just to power sleep. I'm wound up as a top. I said, "Show me you're real." And I said, "Showtime." And I puffed up my little chest, and at that very moment, it felt like a vacuum cleaner with a diameter of maybe 18 inches had gone to my body and sucked 3 things out of my system. And I was like, "What?" I got on my knees, and I asked God, I says, "I go to church. That ain't got me nowhere, Lord. If you're real, I don't know how to do this thing. You got to come inside and do me." And then my wife came in later that day, and they had given me 2 different medicines, one for withdrawal, one for thought processing. And my wife, being a registered nurse, kind of debated with the staff, said, "Why does he need this? He's perfectly sound and sober." But I didn't know I'd been delivered. It would take me years later, I would realize, and I would come to know I'd been delivered by God. So when I got out, I kept on, I still participated in my motorcycle club, but things were changing. I was changing. I also made a promise to my wife. I would take anger management, I would do AA. So I was going to AA, Narcotics Anonymous, and reading the Bible, Bible studies, church. It was about 2 years before I got to a point in my club where I was mature enough to realize God was moving in my life and I had to get out. There wasn't an option. He had a different road for me.
A large part of Ponch's new path is to work full-time riding and telling other bikers about the changes in his life.
Now I get to ride motorcycle with purpose. We're not perfect people. We don't claim to be perfect. It's hard for this little fat guy to try to look cool. So I'm over that deception. And I hit the street preaching the gospel. I wouldn't go back in the same, like a veteran, they'll go back for his own. Soldier, Marine, sailor, whatever, you go back for your own and bring him back. Biker will stop for another biker on the road. Well, I'm coming back for my brothers. That's what brotherhood's about. You're hurt. How are you hurt? I just go back there and give them Christ. I don't give them religion or denomination. And that's what I feel God has called me out to.
For Ponch, the change in his life is undeniable. Just ask his family. He wants everyone to know, for those that want to change, it is possible.
God's restored my marriage going on 40 years this November, and he's restored my relationship with my sons. And we get together out for dinners and stuff and as a family, and we're not broken. God's repaired everything. And all that brokenness are good reminders of the faithfulness of God. This is the best years of my life.
Just before the Christmas of 2016, Brad Sandmire suffered a heart attack. Recovery has gone well, but it's important to stay active.
The reason why I'm building the shop is for my own therapy. You know, the doctors, they're sending me to physical therapy because of my heart attack and my open heart surgery and stuff like that. So you go to therapy for an hour every 3 days or whatever, and then other than that, there's really not much care. So I thought if I was out here turning wrenches, it's better than going to the gym for me, for what I need to do.
I do believe I'll probably get the feeling back in my hands by doing this.
Now, the shop is where Brad spends most of his time, working on his bikes and hot rods.
35 Chevy. This one runs, drives, and is quite quick. 475 horse, overdrive transmission, so I pretty much use it as a daily driver. Just fires right up, sounds good.
Nice as the hot rods are, the real centerpiece of the shop spent 40 years in a barn.
Oh, here's my barn find. I got this spring, 1948 panhead.
When I found it, I thought that is the absolute first thing we're doing in the shop.
There's a lot of good original parts here. The only thing that isn't is the front end, which would be, like, say, the forks and the front fender there. Rebuilt the carburetor, and we got it running. All right, we'll see if this old girl will fire up for us now since I said that it does. There she wants to fire. Did I blow a fuse? It worked before I broke it.
Just like that.
I'm gonna build that bike, and I'm gonna build that 1939 Ford hanging up behind me here too at the same time.
This is going to be my learning experience right here, real mechanics and doing hot rod stuff. It'll be this right here.
I'm pretty good at yelling at him, so he'll learn pretty quick.
Really good at yelling, and so, you know, he'll yell and I'll run and go get tools and cry. And between that, we'll probably get this hot rod running and everything, and we'll have this on the road just in time for self-driving cars.
Probably. It's the closest thing to being on a motorcycle that you'll ever be on.
In a car.
In four wheels.
If you got to ride in a car, you might as well make it that car.
For Brad and Tim, life has been serious, and that makes it easy to bond over the things that they work on.
We try to keep everything as light as possible because there's just so much serious stuff going on, man. That
Right.
If you get on that, then you don't ever get off of it.
Right.
So we try to keep it on a light note.
So we're sitting in a bar in Jamaica, and there's a nice looking lady on my left, then me, then Tim, and then this other beautiful, beautiful island lady talking to him, and he was really, really excited. I mean, very excited. He couldn't believe this woman that beautiful was talking to him.
But Brad kept saying, Adam's apple. And I said, get off of me, man.
Adam who? I don't even know what. Adam who?
What are you talking about? And I was like, man, quit being jealous, just because she wants to talk to me and doesn't want to talk to you.
I said, dude, I'm telling you, that's a man. No. She's beautiful. She loves me.
Leave me alone, man. I'm trying to talk to this girl. And he keeps doing it. And finally, he was like, he grabbed me around, hooked me around the neck and started dragging me out of the bar. And I'm going, man, what are you doing? I'm talking to a girl. And he was like, that wasn't a girl. And I was like, oh.
And this lady fella comes running out. Where are you going? And I'm laughing. And the cab driver, he says, oh, I see you met Jamal. From there on out, obviously, he'll never, ever, ever live that down. But him and Jamal always have Jamaica.
All teasing aside, Brad and Tim prove that those that ride together stick together.
I spend a good portion of my day picking on him, and I have for the last 25 years. But he truly is one of my best friends. This recovery that I went through would have been a lot harder without him here. And we both help each other. If I need him to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning to come into the bar to do something, there's no question in my mind that man will absolutely be there. It doesn't matter what time of day it is. He's one of the greatest people that I've ever met, and I really appreciate it.
There is a brotherhood among riders.
It doesn't matter if you ride a crotch rocket or a Harley. We ride. That creates a bond.
No matter what walk of life we come from, we have the commonality of enjoying riding, and we just get together and ride.
They have a brotherhood. They will rise up and raise thousands of dollars for a good cause.
We do have one ride left, which is Toys for Kids is what they call it. It's always right before Halloween. We've done it with snow. We've definitely done it with freezing rain.
It's called the Landmark Ride. It's a means that the Great Lakes Road Riders use to raise money for the Pediatric Brain Tumor Foundation.
As far as I'm concerned, all charities are great, but I really, really like the ones that focus on local.
Stay tuned for more all-new episodes of My Biker Life, coming soon.